me this, Abby. Do pathological liars know that they are lying?
I think no, because isn't that what makes them pathological? Like they just do it unknowingly?
I don't know.
I think they do to an extent.
Yeah?
I think they know that they're lying, but they think they're doing it for a just reason. So they justify their lying somehow in their head.
And that's the question that I think we should ask ourselves, because I heard this story that was so wild to me that it literally forced myself to wonder, like, what would cause a person to do this to someone, and what causes people to just genuinely become pathological liars. So I was out and we were at like a cookout, and there's a lot of different people there. People are getting to know each other. And every once in a while, this happens to me where I ask somebody a question and you get way more than you thought you were going to get, more than you bargained for. And so I'm speaking to this lady who's a bartender. She tells me that she's a bartender. So I'm like, okay, cool. How'd you get into bartending? So I immediately see her face go, whew, it's a long story. So I'm like, well, ain't really nothing going on. I'm all ears. What's going on? So she says, well, it kind of goes all the way back to when I was a kid. So now I'm like really interested. Like, what?
Oh, we're really going to be here a while.
Right. How does that happen? So she tells me that it all really came down to her stepmom, or her former stepmom, because when she was born, her parents split. They went different ways. Her biological father ended up moving to a different state, and she stayed behind with her mom. So through the years, her biological father used to always tell her, when you get old enough and if you ever want to come stay with me, I'm always here for you. But the mom was like, that could happen once you're older, but I want to raise you myself. So she said, okay, cool. So when she turned 21, she decided that maybe it was time for her to go start her life, and she wanted to go live with her dad, who was pretty successful and was able to help her start living her life. At this point in her life, her dad had met someone, and this was the woman that became her stepmom. So initially, I guess because her dad worked so much that when she started trying to figure the move out, he introduced the two of them and was like, if you ever can't get a hold of me, you can get a hold of her, and then we can figure things out from there until I can get back to you. So she's like, cool. So that's how they pretty much started to become, I guess you can say, close. So the stepmom tells her, if you move out here, whatever field she was working in at the time, it was a field that this woman was interested in. So she's like, hey, move out here. I got an internship I can set you up with. I can get your feet in the door, and then you can start working through me. She's like, perfect. This is amazing. This is more than I ever thought it would be. So she ends up moving out there. She gets acquainted. She gets settled in. A couple months go by. She thought something was odd because the stepmom just kept giving her the runaround. Kept saying, like, oh, yeah, they're still working on it. Still getting the kinks together, but, hang in there. I'm going to get you in there. So that turns into like 2 or 3 months of just back and forth. I'm going to get you in there. Never happens. Mm-hmm. So then finally she decides at that point, I need to go do something to have some form of income. That's how she ended up starting into bartending. She became a bartender. So a year of bartending, she never really talked to her dad about it at that point, but she was getting to that point of like, maybe I need to bring my dad involved in this, because why is after a year am I still getting this runaround? So she goes to the stepmom first to say, hey, and the stepmom tells her at that point, I'm sorry, it didn't work out. I'm not at that job anymore. Maybe we can figure something else out. But she said, to be honest with you, I think maybe you should start thinking about moving somewhere else just in case, because your dad doesn't want you to know this, but we might have to relocate, and we're trying to figure all of that out, but he doesn't want to tell you because he knows it's going to scare you. So I'm telling you, and don't bring it up to him because it's going to make him stressed out, but just have that in the back of your mind. So she's young at the time. She didn't think much of it. She's just like, okay, I guess that's what it is. I'll go along with it. So then a few months after that, she tells her that they are officially moving, and your dad is eventually going to tell you. But the dad never mentions this, and she never brings this up to her dad. But she moves anyway. She ends up moving back with the mom because it just was a situation that wasn't working out. So that's how she got into bartending. She's been a bartender ever since then. But fast forward about 5 years from that point, her and her dad, they talk, but they never really had the same relationship after that because she felt like her dad didn't step up for her. So she gets a call from her dad one day, and she asks her dad, how's his relationship going? And he says, well, that's a long story, but it turns out that she was a pathological liar, and she was lying to me about a whole bunch of things. So at this point, that's when bells start going off in her mind of, wait a minute. So this is kind of odd, Dad, because there was some things that I never really spoke to you about. So he's like, what are you talking about? So she says, well, when I came out there initially, that was the reason I came out there is because I thought she had an internship for me. So the dad goes, internship? What? So she's like, well, yeah, she said she had an internship for me because she worked in this company and she was in the right field and she was going to do this. It turns out she had never worked in that field.
Shut up.
Wow.
She had never had a career. She had never had an internship for her. All of that was a lie. So what the dad eventually found out about this woman was that she had like a plan the entire time for whatever reason to isolate him from his family and everything that he loved so that she could have him for herself. And the number one thing that she had to get out the way to do that was his daughter, because he was always so gung-ho about like, I want to have a better second half of life with my little girl.
That's so
And
nasty.
She didn't want that. So she flew her out there to make sure she was closer to the family so that she could have more control over the fact that her and her dad wouldn't be close enough
Unreal,
to isolate her out. She completely lied about her whole life just to do that. And this poor girl didn't even know this for like a decade. She found this out after she was already out of her dad's life.
Can I tell you that I will be a victim and I will lose to these kind of manipulators every single time? A, because I'm naive, and B, I just tend to believe what people tell me. And then you find out later that it's all a lie. I fall prey to it all the time.
And you feel foolish, right? But it's like, why would somebody play with you like that?
The Bert Show.